Alfred Bettina Austermann, and together with my wife Bettina, we have written a book on a very important issue for many people. I'm working as a psychologist now for more than 30 years, and throughout the years I came across a very important topic, that is the prenatal loss of a twin in the womb. And as we found that this subject is very little known, we have written our first book, La Síndrome del Gemello Scomparso, and this was very touching for many people. It is still a bestseller, and we have received so many letters and emails and a lot of sharings from people who themselves were very touched by the book, very concerned, and so we did a second book, which is mainly a mosaic of sharings of people who cope in one way or another with the loss of a twin in the womb, with the consequences for the adult life, which are sometimes very strong. And I just looked again at the book today, and I found it's really a very touching mosaic of sharings where people learn more about others, how they feel, and we found it very important to make this second book with all the many letters we receive to make it very clear that you, if you are concerned by the loss of a twin in the womb, I'll talk about this later on, that you, with your very particular ways of thinking or feeling, you are not alone. There's many more other people that are as crazy as you are, but in many different ways. Everyone is different, and every loss of a twin in the womb also feels somehow different, but the consequences for daily life are somewhat very similar. And these sharings, it's about maybe 60 people who share their experiences. These sharings can be very helpful for understanding one's own history, and also we put some poems of internationally known authors in it, just to give it also a lyrical frame, like there have been many musicians or poets who have lost a twin and who made this an issue, so we put that also into it. And we also received many poems from people who have lost a twin, and we have received paintings and pictures, and that is all part of our second book. So I would like to present the original German version of this book. The title is I Have Lost My Twin, Solitary Twins Tell Their Story. And on this cover you can see a painting that a client of ours did. It's two embryos who are very intensively connected. I like this one very much, that's why we chose this. And on the back there is also another very colorful picture that a reader has sent to us. I like very much all the testimonials. So, and I think it's a good book for a deeper understanding of what we have even written in our first book, where we mention a lot of facts, of scientific facts, and also a lot of psychological facts, and some testimonials, and this is now the collection of further testimonials which go even deeper. First of all, I would like to go one more time into the womb, which I have here in our little model, with two embryos inside that are deeply connected And for many people it is very touching to see these little baby models, deeply connected, soul to soul, heart to heart, in the womb, which is also represented by this beautiful book cover. And I would just one more time like to explain what happens in the womb. So very often a pregnancy originally starts with more than one baby in the womb. Very often there's in the beginning 2 or 3 embryos even nested in the uterus. And very often one dies quite early, after some weeks, just after the first heartbeats, or later, after 6 weeks later, or 2 months later, which would be like this now. But the short time together is a very intense experience for both of them. It's being like one, very often like 2 hearts beating as one, as you can hear this in many love songs and poems, 2 hearts beating as one. This had really happened to these 2 in this model. And by whatsoever reason, nature is very generous in producing huge quantities, but very often only the fitter ones will survive. And so what happens in the womb, like this one for example, he would become smaller and the other one would become bigger. His heartbeat would become lesser and slower. He would still be here and he would feel many things like panic, like shock, like fear, like sadness, feeling that something's happened that is a catastrophe. And then the twin dies and his heartbeat stops, he's no more there. Maybe he vanishes quite soon, maybe the dead body is still sometime very close. And the survivor, now he is alone. Even if the brain is not very well developed, this paradise that he had lived before is still remembered, but also the shock and the loneliness and the fears and many other feelings that are deep inside this little embryo or fetus. And this will be a very important key for the rest of the life. Many of those people who were then alone in the womb have a lot of difficulties in life to be happy, to love life entirely, and have a lot of fears because they have already experienced, being very small, the big catastrophe, and the feeling of being absolutely unable to save the other one, being absolutely unable to help. So the catastrophe just happens and the little one is there, can't do anything about it, and this feeling of helplessness is very often important in life. And on the other hand, this one tries very often in relationship life to be with a partner as close as he was at the time when he was in good health. So there's also some catastrophes programmed for love life, because very often other people do not want to be that much close, or if they are that much close, they often represent the twin for each other, but then sexuality gets more and more like brother and sister, which is not that intense, more like lukewarm sometimes. Or if the other thing is the case that the dead embryo was still very close to the survivor, it is like a horror trip being to a dead person, the beloved person, dead for a long time in the uterus. So when this embryo is adult later on and looks for a love partner, He comes close to a partner, often from the other sex, but not necessarily. And then when he is close to another partner, he remembers this intrauterine horror trip, being too close to the dead twin. And then often they withdraw very quickly because it is too much. So this is also part of the love life that is influenced by the loss of a twin and many other effects. So this is what I want to show, but now I cover the embryos again. And I would like to talk a little bit more about the effects of the loss of a twin, because some people who have lost a twin also have a strong feeling of longing all the life, looking for something but never getting what they really want, not being content. And some survivors have strong feelings of guilt, like unconsciously having killed the other one or being responsible for his or her death by having taken too much oxygen, too much food, and having killed the other one by this, or having made some wrong movements that squeezed the twin brother, which is very rarely the fact in reality. This happens sometimes, this exists, but it's very rarely the case. But it is felt like being enormously guilty for some people. And some people do not dare to have a good life, do not dare to have money, to be more or less rich, because they have committed a serious crime. It's felt like this, even if it's absolutely not so. Yeah, what other symptoms are important to talk about now? Well, it's mainly the feeling of being incomplete, that something is missing. This is what's the most important. Anyway, we have written a lot about this in our first book, and the reactions were really touching to the first book, in a way like, how do you describe my life so precisely without ever having met me? You have never seen me, you have never met me, but you describe my life as if you have seen me for many sessions. So these testimonials were so touching that after some years of collection, we did our second book, this one, to share this with the other readers. And in fact, we are not really the authors, we only worked on the texts to put them in a format that are good to read in a book. But basically, the authors are the people who have read the book, clients who have done the seminars with us, and people who found many answers in the first book. In our second book, we have a collection. It's like a mosaic of sharings, of testimonials, of people who are concerned by the loss of a twin. And reading these testimonials, many people can find answers to their own questions that they have. How can I cope with possibly having lost a twin in the womb? What can be ways of coping, but also if I have some strange issues that seem a little bit crazy to others. In this book I can also find some people who are, in a normal sense, crazy with a lot of psychological tics and other things, and find answers that, this can be connected to the loss of the twin in the womb. And this, for many people, can be a revelation that, yes, I'm okay the way I am, and I have a reason why I am what I am. So this mosaic can be a very good addition to the first book, and can also be a way to enter into the subject of having lost a twin by reading the testimonials, like understanding, that there's more people who feel in one way or another like I do. I am not that alone and particular as I very often feel in everyday life. One more time, back to the first book, which has been now translated in 8 other languages and published in 8 languages. Now the next one will be Polish, and it's been a bestseller through the years in the German and the French version, and also in Italy. Now it's becoming more and more well known. And we receive many emails as a feedback to this book. Sometimes our office has a little breakdown because it's so many testimonials that we receive, but it's always touching to read. Maybe we cannot always manage to answer to every email we receive, that would be just too much, but still we are grateful to read one more story and another personal sharing. This is very touching. We do also give seminars in Italy. They are called Healing Paths for Solitary Twins. And of course, when we do this like a group therapy seminar, we can go much deeper than we can do by writing a book, because we do exercises in small groups for recontacting the prenatal atmosphere. And also then we do partner exercises, which are very, very intense, where one is the representative for the twin, not for his story, but for the twin of the other. And then the participants re-experience the paradise in the womb, but also the moment of the loss, which is very painful and often reminds of the shock state that really the little one has experienced at the time being. And also we show ways out of this drama in the womb. And this is a very profound process. And we have a website for the French and English-speaking readers. We have no Italian website, we can't do that. But our publishing house in Italy, Amrita, is very helpful also for making contacts. But we have a French and English website, constellations.info, constellations.info, and there you find more infos in English and French. And also the seminars in Italy are mentioned on this website. So you find more infos. Oh my God, there's so many touching sharings in this book that is difficult to mention just one that I find particularly touching. The first thing that comes to my mind now is the testimonial of a woman who was so much looking for her twin sister unconsciously, without knowing that it was really the twin that she was missing, that she played a lot with photos from her as a little girl up to youth age. And she was manipulating with Photoshop, like pictures from her and a girlfriend that she was together with in the holidays. And she put her head onto the girlfriend's body, and so it was twice her. And we see this picture. This is me, and this is what my twin brother would have looked like if he was still alive. This picture is so touching. It's also in the book. This is one beautiful testimonial. And another is how a woman learned to handle their feelings of guilt, feeling guilty all the time. And then she described how she discovered more and more that it was part of the feelings of the little embryo who has lost the twin. And she understood that, the guilt is not real. It's part of the story in the womb, the subjective feeling of guilty, but it's not that. And for her it was a revelation to finally understand this and get rid of this. It's also a beautiful story, beautiful testimonial. I'll just check another one. And I remember one more testimonial of a man who is a composer of film music, and he's very well installed in business, and he made quite some money with his film music. He's very good, and he shared that he always gets the melodies from his twin from the other side. So the twin, who is dead, channels the music to him, and then he plays on the piano the music, the melodies, and makes them a theme for a film. And this is really interesting. So having lost a twin is not only a big loss, but can be also a big chance. And this is what's very clear with his sharing. Yeah, maybe I should talk a little bit more about also the positive aspects of having lost a twin, because I always looked at the symptoms that are difficult, the body symptoms, the psychological symptoms. What is the case is also that alone-born twins are very often very, very sensitive. And this is a big chance, the sensitivity in job life, also in creativity, and also in understanding and helping other people. So this is also a very big advantage that alone-born twins have. And understanding this is also a very important key for understanding the sides of life that are sometimes difficult for a solitary twin. I personally like the second book very much because it's a collection of personal testimonials that are so different, each one, and so interesting. And also I like the poetic mosaic. There's poems in it, some drawings, some pictures, some creative photos. And this is a very good collection of materials, just to put it this way, for understanding more deeply one's own story. Okay, so thank you very much for listening to this interview, and I wish you all the best. Arrivederci.